And we have some breaking news coming out of Ottawa this hour. Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly has announced that Canada is expelling Chinese diplomat Zhao Wei. Joly writing in a statement saying, "We will not tolerate any form of foreign interference in our internal affairs." You would recall last week it was reported that Zhao Wei was allegedly involved in threats against family members of Conservative MP Michael Chong. This breaking news is just coming into our newsroom. Let's bring in CTV's Glenn McGregor for further details. Glenn, good afternoon. We've been seeing there's been so much pressure on the government. The Prime Minister was repeatedly asked this question, and now the government taking action on declaring this diplomat persona non grata.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on the government to finally take this step, and Mélanie Joly appeared before a parliamentary committee last week where she was asked repeatedly, including by Michael Chong, that's the Conservative MP, whose family in Hong Kong was allegedly targeted by this diplomat who works in the Chinese consulate in Toronto. And now during the committee, Joly warned that Canada had to consider the potential consequences. What kind of retaliation China might take? Could it be economic retaliation, some kind of trade measures? Could it affect consular relations? That is, dealing with Canadians who are in China. And we know that there are at least 3 Canadian citizens currently facing sentences of death for various crimes in China. Would this impede Canada's ability to intervene on their behalf? The one that is kind of at the most serious point right now is a man named Robert Schellenberger, who was convicted year before last of smuggling a large amount of methamphetamine in China and was sentenced to death. He received that penalty during the conflict between Canada and China over the detention of the 2 Michaels, which of course was China's response to Canada's decision to temporarily detain and then extradite Meng Wanzhou, the telecom executive who was wanted in the United States. So Joly's concern was that if we were to expel this diplomat from Canada, that China might retaliate in ways that could not be anticipated. However, pressure grew on her to do it, increasing questions. In fact, as she announced this via this statement that she had finally decided to declare Zhao Wei a persona non grata, that's diplomatic terminology for someone who is no longer wanted in the country and has to leave. MPs were voting on a Conservative motion to do exactly that. Liberal MPs actually, ironically, were voting against that motion. I think the principle there is they did not want those kind of decisions to be made by a vote in the House of Commons. That should always be the purview of the Foreign Affairs Minister. Nevertheless, Zhao Wei now is going to have a limited amount of time to get out of Dodge. He's got to leave the country, and we'll wait and see, Akshay, exactly how China responds.